Okay, we prepare everything and spend a little bit time. We came early to be sure that all the equipment is set up, stuff like that. How you're doing there?
Yeah, good, thank you. Yeah, we just finished filming a new show this week, so that's always good fun. Talking to people about what's going on in the world. As depressing as some of it is, it's always nice to talk to like-minded people.
Yeah, I know what you mean, man. I know what you mean. It's the same here, but probably the good news for us is that more and more people are getting awakened, and that's the hope in the end of the day, because we are getting more and more, and we hope for the best.
Oh, it's the same here. Yeah, people are slowly kind of, because a lot of stuff's come out about the vaccine in particular and lockdown harms and things like that. There's a portion of the population that are just doubling down, like they just don't want to admit they were wrong, and so they're actually becoming slightly more aggressive, really. But most people are now starting to see that they've been lied to, and they're not happy about it.
Yeah, same here, same here. Thank you for that we can have you and making this interview for people in Bulgaria. I realized recently that more and more people are looking towards your father, your family, your work, and the influence and the impact is huge here. I'm really happy because I'm trying to translate sometimes some videos, and I'm seeing so many people are watching, and just the feedback, especially after the last conversation with David and Brian, I've got very strong feedback from people, and I say, wow, that was really good. And I want to ask you a couple of questions. I've been thinking, because I wanted this to be more like a free conversation, not so like prepared questions in the beginning, just to throw there. But I've been thinking, what is to be a son of a man who for the last 32, 33 years, in the beginning, he's been so ridiculed. And now in those days, more and more people realizing that actually he was right. And the second question is, when you really get into those things, when you realize the things that your father has been exposing and showing to the world?
Well, I think it's an interesting one for my dad, because people keep saying, it must be amazing to finally see that, people are waking up to what's been going on. But it's a difficult thing for my dad, because obviously he probably wishes he was wrong, that the world actually isn't the way that it is. It would be much nicer to be wrong than right about this sort of thing. And the other thing, because I've had these conversations with him where he said, I was telling people what was coming, not so that I could then later on be like, yeah, see, I told you. I was telling them so we could try and stop it. That's the whole point of it, is to warn people so that, they can act in a way to stop these things happening. And obviously they didn't. And so that's why we find ourselves in this situation. So, it's kind of difficult. He's obviously, it's nice to not be being ridiculed as much. But at the same time, it would have been nice if people were listening 10, 15 years ago, where we could, the fact that it took the state telling you whether you could go and see your parents or not, in countries like ours, you tell someone oh, that's what happens in North Korea, or that happens in China. You'd never expect it to happen in your hometown, but it's what happened. People said goodbye to loved ones over Zoom calls because they weren't allowed to be with them. I mean, here in England, even they banned parents from being with their dying children. Oh. So a child would die alone in hospital rather than have a parent with them because of some, nonsense, virus nonsense. So that horror that people have seen has actually woken a lot of people up, and that's the only positive to take from it.
Yeah. Same here, same here. I've been thinking recently, the last few, let's say 2 weeks ago, or that was the moment that I contacted you and I asked you to make this conversation. I wake up in the morning at 6 o'clock, which is very rare experience for me. I grabbed my coffee. I went on the balcony, and I'm living in the countryside of Bulgaria, in a village, and it's usually there is this quite clean sky. It's beautiful. And I looked through the sky and I was just shocked. I grabbed my camera, I started recording, and I was really, really pissed. I called to someone who is head of organization, and they are fighting against all this corruption, the vaccines, the other stuff. And I say, my friend, what's going on? We need to do something. And he told me, you are the third person in the morning calling me, especially for that. And I've been thinking after that, if we can avoid jabbing us, we can fight somehow, we can refuse, we can even run. Where we can run from the poisoning from the sky? I mean, this is so obvious now.
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's a really good question. And you know, it's one I don't have an answer for, to be honest, mate, because it's a question I've asked myself. You know, where I am, I'm the same as you. I live in a small village, and you know, the skies have been crazy for months and months now, in terms of trails just everywhere. And it's quite interesting actually, because during the lockdowns here, you know, I would talk about this kind of stuff, and you'd get the usual replies. It's just contrails. It's just contrails. And I remember, you know, when lockdown happened here in England, you know, all the flights were grounded basically, and you know, major flights were going here. But in terms of our airport, there's an airport not far from us called East Midlands Airport, and that's where these planes are coming in and out of. And I'm saying to these guys, hey mate, look, I'm on Skyscanner now. Like, there's no planes. Yeah, I'm looking up and I can see them. So it's not just this bog standard contrail thing that you keep saying it is. And you know, I think then you have your kind of Bill Gates of this world now saying openly about we need to have geoengineering, and it's like, well, I thought that was a conspiracy theory. Like, you know, now you're just saying it's something that we need. You know, it's obviously something you've had the technology to do for a long time.
Why do you think they are getting so aggressive? They obviously know that we can see it, we understand it. And I've been thinking, is it because they're getting desperate and they realizing that they need to speed up the process? Because we know the statement of Klaus Schwab that till the end of this year, this graphene oxide will be everywhere. We know about that, or I've been thinking, are they doing this because just they want to make us angry and show us how helpless we are? Or maybe both, I don't know.
I think there's certain parts of it that are making people feel helpless and demoralized. I think the mainstream media all over the world does a great job of telling you that you're useless and everything is out of your control. Even the trust the science, trust the experts was doing that. That was telling you to just shush, leave it to them. They can do it. You're nobody. Also politically, you know, most of our countries are in absolute disarray, and that makes people feel useless. You know, like, oh mate, you know, my country's a mess. Cost of living, everything's, you know, just in a state of chaos. And when life's chaotic, you feel like lost and confused, and you can't really think. You don't walk into a room that's on fire and go, right, let me just think about this rationally and work it out. You know, everything's frantic, and that's how people's lives are now. But in terms of them, why they're being so aggressive, I think they're desperate. I think absolutely they're desperate. I think there's a line, there's a place they want to get us to in terms of absolute control. This social credit system, everything that Schwab is promoting, that's what they want, this control system. But at the same time that they're pushing that, people are awakening. People are awakening on a massive, massive scale. And it's almost like a race to the finish line, because if people wake up fully before they get that in place, it's game over, it's done, you know. So they're desperate to try and get that in place before enough people wake up to bring the whole thing down. I think, you know, it's kind of exciting almost in a way to see how much people are waking up. But at the same time, because they're desperate, they lash out more, and they can be, you know, these vaccine mandates, some of these rules they had in place were just so evil. Like I mentioned earlier, banning parents from being with their dying children. It's that stuff, that's evil. That's evil stuff. But the positive bit I take from it is that they never want us to know what they're doing, they and who is really controlling the situation. They would love to be doing it from the background, as they have been for a long time. you know, manipulate this, manipulate that, manipulate the markets in this way to cause that crash that will lead to X, Y, and Z. And they're all just doing it in the background. Whereas now, because they're in such kind of, you know, such speed, they've had to do stuff because they can see it getting away from them, that they've had to step out into the light. And now, you know, when we were talking about stuff like this 10 years ago, it was, we'd use terms like they, or the cabal, or the secret societies. And they were in the shadows, whereas now, like the World Economic Forum it's on telly. You know, these people are in our front rooms, in our televisions now.
Shameless.
Whereas before they were just in the shadows. And that's a positive thing. I think that's a really positive thing.
I'm expecting the next thing that's gonna show up will be just their green skin and strange puppet eyes, you know, just, I guess this is gonna be the next thing. And sometimes when I'm, you know, I know your family, I've been following you for a long time. Other people are fighting around the world as well. And in the end of the day, I'm asking myself, we are fighting, I know that. We have to still fight, we have to resist. But in the end of the day, is it possible the way for get out of this illusion that we are living, of this simulation, just by somehow realizing our power? We are very higher beings. We are not just the labels they are putting on us. And isn't it possible the way out to be through joy, through positive feelings, through loving feelings towards everybody? Because sometimes I'm thinking we are forgetting to live this life just because we are all the time fighting, and we are still in their game.
You're so right. You're absolutely right. And I'm guilty of it. You know, I think we're all guilty of it, of getting sucked into the game a bit. You know, I'll have days where I wake up in the morning and I'm just like, I just cannot be doing this today. Like, you know, and it sucks the joy out of you. And, you know, I've got 2 young kids. I should be laughing all the time. So you're totally right. And I think we can, by just completely, you know, disassociating ourselves with the system, that, you know, just don't play its game. I think that would have solved lockdowns from the beginning, would have been, no, but very polite. No, I'm not doing it. And if you'd had enough people and enough businesses had said no, then it would have never happened. Unfortunately, they need us to go along with it. You know, I say this all the time, like March 2020 here, if they'd have said, we're closing down all the pubs and the restaurants and the businesses, and those owners would have gone, no, you're not. That's it, done, finished, done in a second. But by giving them 3 weeks to flatten the curve, you kind of let the wolf in the door, really. And now people are kind of trying to scramble, you know, out of the situation they sort of allowed themselves in. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, we should, you know, try and have more joy, and kind of be true to ourselves a bit more. You know, I find that really, really helps in terms of just laughing and laughing at these people as well, because because they're bullies, and you know, bullies, they're nothing more. They hate them being laughed at. It just takes all their power away.
Do you know something really strange that I really feed on it? Because I rather prefer to watch the truth. Don't watch who is telling the truth, because people always is asking who is telling the truth and putting labels. No, man, just listen what the guy has to say to you. If it's true, take it for yourself. Even if Satan came in front of me, Satan, and start talking some truth, I will take them and I will try to shake them. And why I'm saying that? I remember in the beginning of this fake demic, I think second or third interview of David and Brian. I remember the last 30 minutes. Just your father talks about such thing that opened my mind. I remember I walk out on the street, I start crying. It was so energized, and I feel how I'm getting more and more free. After that, there was few more moments following those interviews. And now in the last one, again, in the last 45 minutes, when he's been talking how to get out of the bubble, not shall pass the ring and stuff like that. In this moment, something cracked again in my mind. And I start feeling that as much we realize what's going on indeed, as much we expand our consciousness, this is some kind of power and freedom that as much I testing it, I want it so badly, more and more. And maybe the way out is going through here as well, through this, just to open our mind and get out of the next door, out of the next door of the next door.
Yeah, I think also that there's so much focus, even before, you know, COVID and all that kind of nonsense. There's been so much focus on being something, on people, on you being something, on me being something. You know, everyone wants to be famous, everyone wants to be wealthy. I want to be this, I want to be that. And I remember my dad saying to me years ago, was like, because I wasn't chasing money, I had no interest in money, but I wanted to be a footballer and I wanted to be a musician, and I was kind of chasing all these things. And he was saying, have you ever thought about just being? Forget labels, and because then you're part of the game anyway, of just actually just being. And you know, if you own a guitar, you're a musician. If you play football, you're a footballer. You know, you don't have to, you know. And I started living my life, you know, like that. And I found myself so much happier, you know, and so much more at one with the world I was in and people around me, just by just accepting that, you know, what we are is a miracle anyway. Like, you don't need to be chasing all these goals, but these goals and these labels are what are used to separate us. And you know, you're so right. Like when I hear people say things, and I would share them, say, people then would come back, yeah, but they said this about that. So I'm not sharing that. I'm sharing this. And it's like people don't care what's being said. They care who's saying it. And it's like, is that person in my tribe? Are they on my side? If the answer is yes, I'm just going to agree with what they say. And if they don't agree, I don't agree with that person, then I'm going to disagree with everything. And it's like, well, you know, the analogy of if Hitler said today, like, oh, it's a sunny day, would you have to disagree with that? Because actually I'm looking out the window and it's a really sunny day. But you don't have to, you know, do that, but people do. And they have these kind of tribal tendencies that have been used to control us, and they still are massively.
Let me make you laugh a bit. The last thing I heard, by the way, I'm hearing this pretty much those days, but a couple of days ago, someone commented on one of the videos that I've translated, David, and comment on the bottom, oh, he's controlled the position. Oh, and yeah. I'm just staying like that, and I'm asking them, okay, do you have a proof? How can you prove me that he's controlled position? Nobody never give me an answer of that question. And I'm sitting there and I'm asking myself, what's going on with those people? Why is that?
No, they've been doing that for years. I mean, you know, I had it as well, you know, like that, you know, we're Freemasons and we're a transgender Freemason, I am for some reason. And my wife's a man. It's all very confusing. I wish I'd known. But yeah, Dad's had it for a long time. You know, even they would put up pictures of him dressed in Freemasonic clothing and stuff. It was just dreadful Photoshops, like really bad. And that got spread around a lot. And then someone actually went, thankfully, and they went and found all the originals that had been photoshopped, like Dad's head had been photoshopped. So all these original photos were then shared, and obviously, oh, okay. So then they had to think of another reason why. So then it was the hand symbols, and it's like, mate, the guy's got crippling arthritis in his hands, like his hands are bent around, like you know. And so that couldn't work because most people would go, look, you can see his hands are arthritic. He's not making a symbol or whatever. But now it's if you get any traction within anything, then that means you're controlled opposition, in which case none of us can ever make a difference then, because the minute we start to try and make a difference and we start to get listened to or whatever, then we're automatically controlled. That includes you, me, and everyone else. So what's the point? And a great example of that is there's a guy here in England called Hugo Talks, and throughout COVID, he would make videos calling stuff out. They were pretty good, you know, he was saying stuff, trying to get information out there. And then he seems to have kind of just swallowed every single red pill and every other coloured pill at the same time. And now all of a sudden he's that everyone's a shill, everyone's controlled opposition. And so we just released a film on the Iconic network called No Turning Back, and it's about transgender regret. And so there's lots of psychologists and doctors in there, but there's also people that had transitioned and then regretted it, and they're talking about how they were basically coerced into it as children and stuff. It's a heartbreaking documentary. but it was mentioned in the Daily Mail, which is a mainstream media outlet here, because the Daily Mail, for all their faults, of which they have many, on the subject of transgenderism and protecting kids and stuff, they're actually quite good, and they will actually talk about stuff where a lot of the mainstream outlets won't talk about it. And so they mentioned the documentary and they said it's available on Iconic. Well, that was enough for Hugo Talks. So then he goes on his thing saying, look, the Daily Mail are pushing them. They wouldn't be doing that if they weren't controlled opposition. And you just see all the comments underneath it, like, yeah, I knew it. This proves it. That's it. And you're just like, so what's the point? So what do we do then? We make documentaries to try and change the world, or change people's, not even change people's views, but give them another view to look at, you know. But if any of those documentaries start to get traction that might actually make a difference, then all of a sudden we're controlled opposition. So we can't win then. There's no way of winning.
Like there is no point to fight for those people.
No, exactly, and because they don't fight in good faith either. Like someone had gone in and taken a couple of images from my social media, and they were basically saying how they were, you know, evidence basically of being, you know, controlled opposition. And one of them was, I had a black eye, and it was like, that's that eye, it's eye symbolism. And it's like, mate, it was like 15 years ago, and it was for a song called Beat Up. So we recorded a video for a song called Beat Up, and we even filmed the video in a boxing cage, like in a MMA cage thing, sorry. And so I've got a black eye because I've been beaten up. Like there's no, like, you know, and so that was kind of funny, I guess. But then I saw another image that someone was showing as evidence, and it was me covering my eye. And I was thinking, when the hell did I do that? Because like, I don't do that because I know kind of what some of this symbolism means. And I've actually, believe it or not, when people have come up and said to get a photo or whatever at a gig, I've had people ask me to do that. Yeah, I'll do that. And I'm like, not a chance, mate. Like, you're just trying to catch me out. Like, what are you on about? But I'm there and I'm covering my left eye. And I was like, where is that? And then I kind of recognized like this brickwork in the back. I was like, man, that's a gig. And so when I watched the video of the gig, it's for a song. The song is No Love, What's Love Without Meaning. Is I'm singing and I'm playing, right? I'm singing and I'm sweating as hell in Manchester's underground club. And I wipe sweat out my eye and then I sing. Right? And so they just pause it. And then you're just like, but that's not arguing in good faith. So like when you're asking me, am I a Freemason? You're not actually asking, but you've taken that, you've cut it and gone, look, you know, it's kind of funny at times, but kind of frustrating too. Because I see people get sucked in by it, you know, and they believe it. And you're just like, mate, trust me, you know, my dad's been exposing Freemasons for 30 odd years. He'd literally be the worst Freemason ever.
No, you can't believe how many people are, how to say, impacted by those manipulations and this blackmailing. Usually I'm talking over them and I'm explaining that this is not an actual evidence, but if they are just child in their mind, they're not a grown-up person with their independent way of thinking, there is nothing more that we can do.
No, exactly. And it's difficult as well because you have like those people that you can present any kind of evidence to them and they just don't want to know. So those people that have had 4 jabs, 5 jabs, and you're saying to them, look at this evidence, look at this. No, I don't want to know, don't want to know. Like literally, la, like they won't listen to anything. But then on the other end is you have people that believe everything. So they will believe the last thing they heard. And if the last thing they heard was that, you know, so-and-so is a Freemason or so-and-so is a transgender Freemason or whatever, then that's true because it's the last thing I heard, you know. And, you know, neither end work. It's kind of trying to find that balance in the middle where you judge things based on evidence and you go, right, does that feel right to me? Does that add up? Yes, that adds up, in which case that is how that's what I think, that's what I believe, you know. But yeah, it can be quite frustrating, but sometimes funny as well, you know.
Yeah. Okay, I've been thinking, there is something that you want to wish to people from Bulgaria? There is really a lot of people here that are watching. I've just been surprised recently how many people are following, translating materials from Iconic, from davidicke.com, interviews here and there. Just the network here is full, and I I'm looking in the people that they've got very positive attitude to your family. What do you want to wish to them? Is there something that you want to say?
But I think it's great that people are waking up. I think it's wonderful. I went to Bulgaria actually with my wife years ago, and we stayed in Nesebar, and
Yeah.
it was great. Yeah, I loved it, and I found the people to be really lovely actually, and really, really nice. But I think I would be interested to ask you actually what the situation was like in Bulgaria in terms of the COVID situation, and also what the feeling is with the Ukraine situation, because we don't like Bulgaria is one of those places that you don't really hear that much about here in England at all.
I'll tell you, the situation is very strange. First of all, we are Slavianic people, like Russian, like Ukrainian. And actually, we've got both feelings to both sides. But the propaganda here is very strong. They try to, because, Bulgaria is more like American colony. They trying to turn us against Russia, which is quite impossible. Of course, there is people that are against Russia, against Putin, against Ukrainian people. But the truth is that we are brothers, and we are trying not to bite this propaganda. Unfortunately, they are using us. They are using us like a resource country against Russia, which we don't like, absolutely. But that's the government. Also about COVID, the situation is that Bulgaria remains one of the few countries in the world, according to the official statistics, that over 80% does not take the job.
That's incredible.
Yes, and people here are very aware. And also the measures that's been taken during this period in Bulgaria, they wasn't so hard. First of all, because we enter in a cascade of elections, and because we've been in a cascade of elections, none of the governments wants to push to the end the measures because they will push people away from them. And yeah, there's a situation. Recently, they tried again to push masks and stuff like that, but very few people bite it. No more. And there is few organizations in Bulgaria. They are public organizations. I mean, they are not belong to the government or to the corporations. Those people are very enlightened. They find very strongly, if you remember this SETA thing that was coming from Euro-Atlantic side, they even stopped this set in Bulgaria, and it couldn't happen. And that's it. Now we are after elections at the moment, but unfortunately, the new old people are here again. We don't expect anything good. And more we are trying to organize between our organizations. We are trying to grow up in numbers, to be independent in any possible way, to support each other, to create our own communities where to support each other, either to go out of the cities to live together, because we realize that's the thing we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the answer as well. It's the same here, is to find your tribe and kind of build your tribe, because you're gonna need them, unfortunately, I think, when it really comes down to it. And it's the same here. It's funny, like we didn't have a 80% avoid the jab. That would have been incredible, but a lot of people went out and got the first one here, but about 25 million people didn't. So we're still at 25 million here that have not had one. And you think, out of a country of 70 million, that's not bad. It's pretty big numbers. But in terms of the boosters here, no one wants them. But no one wants them. Even older people that generally trust authority, because that's how they've been conditioned their whole lives. Even they're refusing boosters here. I was reading an article in the newspaper where they were saying like the government doesn't really know what to do about it. And it's like, well, you can't do anything about it. If people have said no, in a free society, that should be the end of it, And obviously with these new Pfizer documents coming out, then, I can't see people going for it again now, which is encouraging. But at the same time, it's heartbreaking for those that have been duped, those that thought they were doing the right thing, because I get emails, and I know a lot of people here at the office, you get emails daily from people that are just, they've lost family members or whatever, and it's heartbreaking to read, it really is. So Bulgaria has done amazingly well to avoid it.
I hope it will stay that way. The truth is, a lot of people passed away also here, side effects, about all those things. And I'm thinking that the worst thing, even it's worse than war, it's ignorance. You cannot excuse ignorance. Even I remember in the Bible, there is one statement that Jesus is telling, these people are dying because of ignorance. And what we can do? Well, we can keep fighting for them, trying to wake up whoever wants to wake up. And finally, as one guy told me 2 years ago, this is a natural process. When you dumb down the whole world, actually, you are coming to the point when this is happening. I don't know if it's natural process or not, but looks like we can't expect for the old to come back, as even in the old was wrong. Wrong, but the people did not realize it. We need something totally new if we want to evolve in our minds and our bodies.
I agree completely. Yeah, the old normal wasn't great either. There was lots of problems there. I agree with you completely. And I've actually said that before on podcasts, and then got given loads of abuse for it, because I was like, promoting this new normal agenda. I said, I'm not at all. I'm just saying, like, we had issues before in terms of governments and corruption and control over the population. Like, that's not a new thing. That hasn't just been here in like the last 3 years. It's. You can't save everyone. That's the difficult thing. Like you're talking about there, that this is maybe some kind of process, and it is a hard thing to come to terms with. And I really struggled with it early on in this, because I was arguing with people online. I was like trying to persuade people, not for my benefit of winning an argument. I couldn't care less about winning an argument. I was trying to get them to see that this, like, just don't do this, guys, please. Like, this is not good. Trust me, this is not good. And it would break my heart a bit when people would just go ahead and carry on regardless, and just get sucked in by the propaganda and the lies. But in the end, like, I was just like, I can't kill myself over trying to save people. You can only save those that you can only speak to people that want to listen, basically. And if they don't, then they won't. And they might well circle back round. They might come later on, and they just weren't ready to see yet. That's another thing to remember. If you've been doing something like we have, talking about this stuff for a while, you're slightly further up the ladder than those that are maybe just waking up. And obviously our view is a lot bigger than those that are a few steps down, and it's like a case of like, let's not bully those people, let's just try and get them up so they can see as well, but at the same time, it's then trying to find that balance of, I don't want to beat myself up about the fact that I can't wake everyone up. But at the same time, I don't want to become so kind of desensitized to it, to a point where, you'll see someone dies of the vaccine and you go, oh well.
No, and I'm seeing such a people. I'm seeing people exactly in that condition, and I'm thinking, who is worse in this case? You lack total sense of compassion, because someone is doing that of ignorance. It's not okay, man.
No, it's finding that balance, isn't it? That you have, empathy and compassion, like you say, but at the same time, you're not so open to it that every little thing just affects you really negatively. Like, I mean, there's a bodybuilder, he tweeted, or he put on his Facebook, this is like 2 weeks ago, how he, he's going to go and take his booster, and that basically that's his choice. And of course, whatever, you do what you want, mate. It's his choice, but he's going to put a challenge out there to people like me and you, basically, that if I go and take this and I get no I don't die and I get no negative, problems, then you apologize for the fact that you've been spreading lies and misinformation and telling people, that, putting fear out there and blah, 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 blah. And then he died. And you're like, and I saw people celebrating it, like, lol, ha. And it's like, mate, come on, like, let's not lower ourselves to this level of low vibration where you find it funny, But at the same time, it's a lesson as well,
Yeah.
there was the cardiologist in America who said he wouldn't cry at a single funeral of an unvaxxed COVID death. And then he took his booster and he died. And again, I saw people celebrating that. And it's like, I can't bring myself to celebrate anyone's death. Like, I can't stand the royal family and I can't stand the Queen or any of them. But when she died, I'm like, I ain't celebrating that because
you're not happy. You're not jumping to the skies.
No. I'm like, let's not pontificate and celebrate as if she was the most incredible person in the world because, there's probably within our eyesight here 96-year-olds that will die and no one cares, But at the same time, I don't get the idea of celebrating anyone's death, no matter who they are, because I just think that lowers where we're coming from.
Yeah, right. I totally agree with your position, and it's a position of wisdom and balance, just a position of knowing exactly what's going on and trying to keep our human feelings, and in the same time, not to allow those satanic feelings, their demonic feelings, to come in us and to hate or to ridicule or something.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't work in that way.
People also don't like being told what to do or what to think, and so you turn your television on and you've got social commentators, presenters, politicians, scientists, the experts telling you what to think and what to feel and how to react and who to hate, hate the Russians and all this kind of stuff. So then for someone like us to come out and go, no, you need to think this, you need to hate them, you need to, it's like, well, how are we any better then? How are we any better than these people if we're acting like that? So I found, particularly with COVID in England, that probably, I reckon, 10% of the population probably got it straight away. They were like, this is a scam. And then 10% of the population were probably like, oh my God, we're all gonna die. This is awful. And then there was probably about 80% that were kind of like, I don't know what's going on, but it doesn't really, something feels off. Like something don't feel right here. Like this is a bit weird. Like I don't know anyone that's died. Do you? No. And I heard these conversations all the time in supermarkets where people were like, do you know anyone? Nah. It's weird, isn't it? And I was at a supermarket and this guy, he just looked at the lady and he said, do you know anyone? She said, no. And he went, does anybody who works here know anyone? And she went, no. And he went, it's weird, isn't it? And she went, yeah, it is weird, isn't it? And that got in my head then, just the line, it's weird, isn't it? And so I used it all the time because I'm not telling anyone what to think or how to feel or whatever. But I would have conversations with people like restaurants and stuff were closed, the cafes were closed, but you could get like outside food, like you could take away stuff. So I might stand in a queue to get some food and I just chat to the guy and he'd be like, oh man, it's crazy. And hopefully we can go back to normal soon, normal conversation. I'm like, yeah, did you see, I was reading today actually about, the PCR test and about the fact that it doesn't do X, Y, and Z, blah, blah, blah. And he was like, really? I was like, yeah, it's weird, isn't it? And he was like, that is weird. And I remember then the next time I went, it was a burrito place. And the next time I went, like a couple of days later, the guy recognized me because obviously we'd had a conversation. He was like, here, mate. I was just reading up on that thing you were saying about the test. I also found blah, 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 blah. That's weird, isn't it? And I was like, that is weird, isn't it? And so he then became like, he went away and researched stuff. He became proper, like enlightened them to what was going on. And then like him and his wife, they both took their masks off. They weren't wearing them anymore. Not because I told them to, because that's not my place, but because they then just, all it took was, it's weird, isn't it? And I found that I used that so much for the last 2 years of just saying to people, like, say facts and then just say it's weird, isn't it, what they're doing. And most people, I think, will be like, yeah, it is weird. And then they start to then ask questions. And, if you start to ask questions, the whole thing falls apart, really.
Isn't it amazing? Amazing. I've knew that for so many years, but when I saw it now, when this pandemic starts, what big impact the TV got over the people. It's amazing. It's amazing. They just paralyzed, stop thinking straight. and whatever the TV is telling them, they are just onto it. It was amazing.
It was extraordinary. And I said that to people before. What makes you believe some guy in a suit on your television more than your own eyes? Especially like 18 months, 2 years into this whole thing. Like, you still believe that guy on the telly when he's telling you that everyone's dying, but you know they're not, because you've got eyes, and your friends, your family, your work colleagues, they're not dying. So like, what is going on? It is crazy. But I did find, mate, like once during the stuff, they basically, this will make you laugh because this is about health, right? So in England, I don't know if it's the same there, but in England, you have to have something called an MOT on your car. So
yeah, I know it.
Yeah,
I've been living there. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah. So every year, you just basically, you take the car to the garage, and the guy goes over it, just make sure it's safe. Like, it still might break down in a week, but it's not going to kill anyone, basically, is the logic. So when we're supposed to be saving everyone's lives for that first year of COVID, they scrapped all MOTs. You didn't have to get your car MOT'd. So you could be driving around in a total rust bucket with dodgy brakes. Right?
Total nonsense.
Total nonsense.
And so many nonsense been happening while they apply those restrictions to us, and people just stop seeing us. At least, can you walk in a 38 degrees Celsius or 39 here in Bulgaria 2 months ago? They force people to wear masks in the public transport. They couldn't breathe, man. You can't breathe when it's so hot. You can get a heart attack. But people were complying because not thinking.
That's the thing. People didn't think. And what's crazy is, like, I had an issue with my car, so I didn't have to take it for an MOT, but I knew there was something wrong with it. And I was like, right, so I took it to the garage. And the guy's going and just looking at it, and I was sat in the waiting room. Now, I don't watch TV, mainstream TV, because it would just wind me up, to be honest. So, but it was on. There's a channel called BBC News 24, and it is just 24 hours of lies, basically just lies to you for 24 hours. And I was sat there, and this was, probably maybe 3 or 4 months, I think, maybe into this whole nonsense. And I was sat there and I was watching it, and I just, like, after about 10 minutes, the guy came out and he was like, "This is the issue," and I was thinking to myself, no wonder everyone's crazy. Like, if they're watching that, like, I watched 10 minutes and I was literally like, this is just madness. Like, no wonder everyone's mad. Like, and then I was speaking to some friends who've got like relatives in care homes, and all the elderly they weren't allowed in their communal areas. They would just be sat in their bedrooms, in their wheelchairs or on their bed in front of the BBC News. And you're just like, now I can see why everyone's crazy, because they're just pumping you full of all this just nonsense. People dropping dead on the street in China, people dropping dead on the street in India. It never happened anywhere else.
Do you know what? Sometimes I'm thinking it's much more serious. It's a form of MK Ultra hypnosis. We get used to it because we grow up in the age of television, and it's okay. We're not always being awakened and be aware what's going on. And probably it's hard for us to see how evil is that thing. But I'm telling you, I've been talking to relatives during this period of COVID and stuff like that. I've been exposing the lies and everything. And sometimes I've been seeing a little bit change in them. In the moment they spent a week away and a week front of the television, they forgot everything we've been spoken, everything that I've showed them. And I realized that there is some kind of effect when you're watching TV. It's washing all the rest. All the alternative information is going away.
100%. 100%. There's a lot of, of ideas of that in terms of the jab rollout. There was a lot of reports, particularly in America, of people that just that were speaking out from the beginning, that went out and got it, and then didn't understand why they did it. I don't know. I just felt this urge from what felt like nowhere just to go and get it. And it's like, who's planting that urge there? Who's putting that urge in there? Because I don't know if it was the same in Bulgaria, but in England or in the UK, our entire COVID response, everything, was pushed by an organization called SAGE, Independent SAGE. which is not independent in the slightest, but it was sold as independent. And there were scientists, that's what we were told, scientists and doctors that were forcing, you know, the government to do things. And most people that didn't know better were like, well, that's how you want it. I want doctors and scientists. I don't want politicians. I want doctors and scientists. And it's like, but doctors of what? And scientists of what? And actually, the whole thing was being driven by psychologists.
Yeah.
Not virologists or anything else. It was psychologists. And, you know, the biggest one, Susan Michi, is a fully signed up member of the Communist Party, you know, like, and she was controlling government policy in terms of what they were doing and how people would react. Her organization was part of the behavioral insights team. So about manipulating behavior. And that's what they were doing with the television. They were, you know, I used to say to it used to infuriate me, because I would say to people, you know, that an expert would come on the radio and they'd say, you know, this is what people need to do. They need to wear masks, they need to do this, they need to do that. And he'd stay 2 meters apart, not see family members, not do X, Y, and Z. And then the presenter would say, thank you very much. That was Dave Smith, head of psychology at Edinburgh University or whatever. And you're like, but if he was a dentist, you wouldn't listen to him. Like if they said that Steve, he's a chiropractor, you'd go, why am I listening to a chiropractor about a virus? And so you go, well, why were you listening to a psychologist about a virus? Well, why was that a thing? You know, but people didn't seem to ask that
Or
question.
those people that are working on statistics only throw you some kind of crazy numbers through your face, and people just hearing about the numbers of deaths per day without to be able to realize that actually those numbers are total scam.
Yeah, real. Exactly. And also, you know, I remember having a conversation with someone when he was saying, but what about the people that died in the care homes? There was like 40,000 in the first few months. And obviously later on, we discovered that they were pumping them full of midazolam, put them on do not resuscitate orders and all the rest of it. But at the same time, I said to him, I said, well, 10,000 people die in care homes every month in the UK normally. And he came back going, mate, I've agreed with a lot of the things you've said about lockdowns and X, Y, and Z, but that's just nonsense. That's just, I was like, mate, you can literally get the statistics from the Office of National Statistics. Like, that's how many people die. 1,600 people die a day in England every day on average, even before this sort of stuff. And what was a bit of a savior here, actually, was there's a guy called Jamie who I had him on the show a few weeks ago, actually. Now, he's coming from a very mainstream way of thinking, like he wouldn't go along with our views on lots of stuff, I doubt, but he does know about statistics because he used to be a head of analysis at the Office of National Statistics, right? So he's very qualified. So when they started throwing out all these stats and everyone's going, oh my God, and all, you know, put a mask on, save granny, all that sort of stuff, he was going, but that's not what that means. And so he was like breaking down, and his Twitter handle, I think, is Stats Jamie, and he was very good throughout because he was breaking down what those stats actually mean. But the newspapers would just take the figure, bang, bang. And it was very interesting here. They had one day, I think it was in July, it was the end of July, or it might have been later than that actually, end of July, say, maybe August. So this whole thing kicks off in March. Death. And then there was this day, end of July, early August, whichever it was, where there was no deaths, right? Not one, none. Didn't even make the newspaper. And you just think, that'd be your front page. That would be your front. What a great thing to be able to, like, even if you believe the narrative, I mean, which I don't believe any of it, but if you did, then wow, mate, put that on the front page. This country has been through enough. We need a good news story, you know, bang. But they didn't even mention it. Didn't even mention it, which is, you know, that tells you all you need to know really about what they want people to believe. They want people terrified.
Sometimes I'm thinking about the journalists. They're doing such a wrong thing. The impact over the world through their work is tremendous, and it's so wrong, it's so bad. And sometimes I'm thinking that they are more evil than the politics. Because when you're spreading this lie, when you're spreading this information all day through the news, I'm watching their faces, man. Even I find out the material where it was explaining that they are going on a special programs when they are training them how to manipulate, how to hypnotize, how to twist your words if you're in interview. And I've been asking myself, what kind of creature you have to be to go there and practice or learn or study something like that? Obviously, you won't be normal person for it's crazy.
It is, and I learned the hard way. Like I gave a speech in Trafalgar Square, which kind of sort of promoted me from nowhere to somewhere in 2020, and the Times, which is a big newspaper here, got in touch, and I spoke to them because I was naive at the time, and I thought, hell, if they want to talk to me, I can get all this stuff out there which might help people make a difference. And my dad phoned me and he was like, I've just heard you've spoken to the Times. And I was like, yeah. And he's just like, oh, fucking hell, man. Because he knows what's coming. He knows what's coming. Yeah. And so what they did, luckily it was behind a paywall, so, hardly anyone saw it. But they put this article out there. They didn't twist my words, actually. They just didn't say anything that I'd said about things. Because the guy on the phone was okay. I spoke to him for about an hour. And I was saying things to him, and he was actually going, that's a fair point, actually. And I was thinking, this is all right. Like, we might have a balanced piece, I was talking to him about COVID deaths and the fact that I knew 2 people, literally in the world, 2 people that had COVID on their death certificate. Both families were disputing it. One died of cancer. One had liver disease, kidney pneumonia. He was just very ill man. And both the families are disputing it because that's not what he died of. And I said, yeah, I could tell you 7 people I know that have killed themselves. So this is why I'm coming in for some sort of conversation about lockdowns and the negative effects and X, Y, Z. Didn't print it. Literally just didn't mention it. And then what they did is they took my wife and they put a photo of my wife. My wife was a teacher at the time. So they put a photo of her in there. Now, she's got no relevance to me speaking in Trafalgar Square. She wasn't even there. But it attacks her then. She's a teacher. She's irresponsible. Yeah. And also the photo they used of me and her, she's heavily pregnant at the time, right? And so again, that looks like I'm being irresponsible. The fact that our daughter was 2, do you know what I mean? It's just a photo. And so it kind of plants that seed of, he's going out there and going to protest and getting the virus and bringing it home and giving it to her, and she's going to give it to the unborn baby that's 2 years old already, and then she's going to then take it into the school and she's going to give it to all these kids, and that's the stuff they were trying to plant by using that photo.
They've got their ways. They've got their ways to try to blackmail us, to turn people against us. They're trying to find some kind of weaknesses, despite the fact that probably the most wicked people in the world are those that are behind the walls of government buildings and stuff like that. If their sins and errors are showed up, we will be shocked. We will be shocked. Where's coming all the child trafficking? Who is supporting it? What they're doing in their rituals in those old buildings all around the world? It's nasty thing.
No, exactly. And the media plays a huge role in protecting these people.
Yeah.
But what COVID did here the media was struggling anyway. Like people like The Guardian, it's a big newspaper here, they were begging for donations and stuff, so financially, particularly the print media is been on its backside for a while. And then all of a sudden this thing appears, and the government then spends hundreds and hundreds of millions and millions and millions of pounds of our money, taxpayers' money, pushing all this messaging within these newspapers. So then suddenly these newspapers that are begging for money now don't need to beg for money, but you're going to print something against the government, that same government that's funding your whole existence. Of course you're not. And so
impossible.
Yeah,
impossible.
Exactly. Here it was. People laugh at China and they laugh at North Korea in terms of this authoritarianism, but there was one day here when the jabs came out, where the government took the front page of every single newspaper, every single one. And so when you looked in a newsagent's, every single newspaper was the same front cover, which is a message from the state. And you're like, mate, that is some V for Vendetta 1984 brand new world stuff, and people just don't seem to, what is the difference between people being told to come out and give claps and bow to their dear leader in North Korea? What's the difference between that and everyone being told to go out at 8 p.m. on a Thursday and clap the NHS? and come out with their pots and pans.
That was ridiculous, man. I've been in my house and I'm hearing some kind of noise outside. I didn't know about this campaign. I went on the balcony and I'm watching people on the balcony just clapping. And I say, something's really wrong here.
Yeah,
and after that, I realized what's going on.
Well, that's the thing. Like the first time, like it happened, like my daughter was just like, you know, what's going on? Obviously, like, so I opened the door. Everyone stood there clapping. My daughter's like just looking like that, thinking they're all clapping her. And so I was then, oh, forget this. Like, I'm not having any part of this. But there was a lady across the road who was always banging her pots and pans, and she was craning her neck, you know, making sure that everyone was out. Oh, see number 25's not come out, you know, all judging. So I found it really funny, right? So what I thought was, because I'd done this at one point in lockdown. I was finding challenges to do because I was always going out like screw the rules. And so I was like, right, I'm going to do 7 10K runs in 7 days. And where I was living at the time was quite hilly. So even though it's just a 10K, it's pretty brutal on the legs. And so I was doing it in about an hour, which isn't amazingly quick. But when you're doing that many in a row, I'll take an hour. So what I was purposely doing was leaving my house at 7 p.m, right? So I was coming back down the street at 8 p.m. as everyone was coming out clapping. And I'm just running down the street like it's the end of the race. You know, they've all come out for me, you know.
Oh, man.
Because I just found it funny. Yeah, I just found it funny. Yeah, because it's like, you know, you just laugh. You gotta laugh. You gotta laugh.
Very good, man. Very good. You mentioned that we are restricted in the time. They are making me sign here that we are going almost an hour. Should we cut off here and maybe in the future we can meet again?
I would love to talk to you again, mate. I would love to. Yeah, the only reason I've got to go is I'm in Derby at the moment in the studio, which is a bit of a drive to where I live. And so I need to pick my daughter up from school. She's just started school, which I was terrified about because of, you know, the schooling system. But she's only 4 and she wanted to go. So we thought we'll give it a go. And if it's horrible, we can just take her out. But she's loving it. And the teachers seem great. It's a tiny village, so it's a really small school. So fingers crossed. But yeah, I'd love to do this again. I've actually really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it will be a pleasure for us. And okay, let's cut off here. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation, and we'll be happy to have you again.
Yes, mate. Thanks for having me. And
thank you.
Thanks for the support, mate, as well, mate. Appreciate that.
Thanks for everything. We are with you and we are praying for you. Bye-bye.
Cheers, mate. Take care. Bye.